But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.
This is Reuben Blackwell, and so excited that you're back here with me on another Wednesday to have good talk with Express Yourself. And as always, I have the best guests. Gosh, people are just so good to take time out of their lives to spend a little time to chat with me and with you, so you get to have good information and hopefully enrich your life and hear all about great things taking place across our state and across our country. You will not be disappointed today. I have a wonderful guest today, Mr. Cornell Wright, who is a health equity expert recognized around the nation for the work that he has done to ensure that all Americans, all people who live in America, what about that? All people who live in America who find their way crossing through our borders, east, west, north, and south, have an opportunity to have a good chance at having a good life. Cornell, we appreciate you taking your time. Thank you for joining me and with our listening audience at Express Yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why don't we just get started and tell us a little bit about who you are? You know, our paths crossed when you assumed the role of the leader for the North Carolina Minority Health Advisory Council. You staffed that effort, but you also led that office in ensuring that our state paid attention to the areas of inequities and disparities in health in all North Carolinians, but specifically in populations of color. So why don't you just give us a little background about who Cornell Wright is and what inspired you to take the path of profession that you've dedicated your life to?
How deep you want me to go back?
What was the song? I was born by the river.
Man, thanks for having me again. Cornell Wright. Currently, I work at General Dynamics Information Technology, which is a government contractor. Our parent company being General Dynamics, the aerospace and defense contractor with the government. But in my world, I am a health equity advisor for federal health, meaning that our partners are all the federal health agencies. We're talking about HHS, CDC, CMS, NIH, the VA, you name it. If it's federal health related, we are connected to it somehow. Prior to taking this role, being recruited to this role, I was the inaugural Chief Health Equity Officer for a national nonprofit called the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which was started by the Clinton Foundation and the American Heart Association, where they do whole child health equity with schools and school districts across the country. Prior to that role, I spent a good chunk of my life, it seems like forever, but 7+ years at the helm of the North Carolina Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities within the Department of Health and Human Services within state government. That's where we first crossed paths. It was through there that I learned and grew so much. But prior to that, I've held different positions in different organizations, including the Center for Health and Healing, a nonprofit affiliate of the General Baptist State Convention of North Carolina, where they did health promotion and health education programs with churches and community groups and communities across North Carolina within the catchment area of the GBSC. I've also done some work in clinical spaces, including UNC on the lower GI surgery floor, and Duke Cancer Institute as an outreach and screening patient navigation coordinator, and learned so much just even from the clinical side of things. Also worked at American Heart briefly in some of that span as well. So I've had a really well-rounded career, and outside of the career path, what got me into this was in grad school. So I have 2 degrees from North Carolina Central University, the first being in political science, the second being my master's in public administration. While I was getting my master's, I became a part of a class that looked at health policy. And so my spin has always been policy and health. And that's the angle I've taken in all the jobs I've done in this field. But we were getting the residence halls and dormitories to be 100% tobacco-free through policy. And that included a lot of different health education and health promotion techniques, which we partner with our health education department at Central. So our public administration and health education departments did a joint class. And we were able to get that policy change that still holds true until today. That kind of wet my beak, so to speak, to get into kind of health from that angle. And my next opportunity came as an AmeriCorps Fellow out of the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities. So that was my last year of grad school. And that's, the amazing part of my story is I've gone full circle already from where I started and, to where I've been, to go from being an AmeriCorps Fellow to leading that office years later is one of my most proud accomplishments that I was able to do so far, and still looking to do more.
That's fantastic. And such a young man, you've had a lot of living and a young life. I'm telling you, a lot of living. That's quite impressive. So let's just talk about health inequities, health disparities. What's your lens? When I first met you, it was the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities. Yep. And with your influence, the secretary changed the nomenclature, of the office because it was a different way of thinking. Tell us the difference.
So I never forget the conversation you and I had where you were telling me in an honest, am I allowed to say this out loud?
Of course. Okay. Yeah. This is real talk. This is real talk.
You were very candid and very open with me. And I remember I had been in the position at least a couple years before we had this conversation. Mm-hmm. But I remember you and I were paired up when I first got there, 2015, at one of Courtney Crowder's conferences with the
Black Alliance.
Yeah, the Black Alliance.
That's
and
right.
The Black public officials and all that. And we were paired up to do a presentation, and I did like a state of the office. And I started talking about this thing about health equity. And you told me, you looked at me, you was like, hold on, what is this equity stuff you talking about? Because prior to that, it's always been disparities, right?
That's right.
And so I think what's been helpful is the way I've been able to articulate that to others is health equity is that goal we're trying to reach, where everybody can obtain good health and have it sustained. Those unfair differences that prevent that from happening, we call the health inequities. And the way we measure that gap, or where we see that distance between what's compared, is the disparity. And so when we look at it in that context, then we understand that I'm not trying to take away from anything that was before me, but I'm trying to add on to it. And so I thought it was so humbling of you to even admit that in your space. I hold you in such high esteem and regard for everything that you're able to do in the spaces and places that you're in. And so it just made more sense when I took over that role, and then you were also on the Minority Health Advisory Council. It just made it so much easier for you to see what the vision is, or was and still is, to make this a reality and just roll our sleeves up and just kind of do that work together. So I appreciate you for, not writing me off as some young guy who's just trying to make a name for himself.
No, I was genuinely, sincere about wanting to understand where the trajectory was. And, Cornell, and for our listening audience, we see it played out so many times. Black people and other people of color, but I have to speak with what I know. I'm a Black man in America, grown up here. Family's been on this side of the Atlantic since the 1700s, literally. And so our journey, we always find ourselves having to make people who are not Black feel comfortable with our sadness and our pain and our lack and what I have committed myself to, specifically as an adult, is that I can't make this comfortable for you, because living the experience in the face of oppression and all this insanity, that I hear people say America's not a racist nation. Well, we are perhaps, well, I'm not going to lie. No, we try to do it and we do it well. Racism was manufactured, designed, implemented, and sustained. And it seems that there's so many who want to pretend that it does not exist or gloss over those realities and those statistics. And my concern was always about, are we, saying that we don't want to look at that? And what I learned from you in particular, and your perspective was, no, we just want to look at the whole, we want to look at the long game. Because if we stay in the disparity space and aren't clear about where our goals are to move us from point A to point whatever, then we'll always approach this from a perspective of lack. And that's what impressed me, is that, okay, this is about building from where we are and taking us to a place where we need to be. And that's my understanding of the difference between equity and disparity. And it does not say, in dealing with health equity issues, it does not say we don't look at the disparities, because measurement is everything, isn't it? We have to look at the data. Data must lead, and data will convince you, if you look at it fairly, that it's clear that there are differences between populations and how they prosper in our nation. And what we should be doing is making give everybody the opportunity to have the best possible life that they really can have. I think that's what America is supposed to be about. That's the America, at least, that Black folk have always tried to create and believe in. It's an America in the face of all that we have been withheld and held back and oppressed and beat up and talked about and slandered and everything else. We've always had this persisting hope. There is a dream of a true time that we'll be able to walk into those promises that the authors of the Constitution penned.
Is that the name of your next book, The Persistent Hope?
The Persistent. Okay, that's a good one. All right, don't y'all get that title. That belongs to me.
I think you need to write that one down.
Thank you, sir. I was throwing it back to you, my brother.
No. I like that. I'll help you do. I'll put something on it with you. But
will you help me out? What about my first one?
Right. Well, I think we all got a bunch of books. We just hadn't finished them yet. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Just got to put it.
You said something important, and I don't want to gloss over it. When you talked about racism, right?
Yeah.
Here's my take on that conversation that usually disarms a lot of people when I say it, is I don't think we talk about it in its totality. Racism, in its truest definition, is talking about systems of unshared power. Now, when we start getting into the weeds of things, we look at skin color and we look at all these other things. And that is an important conversation because we've made it important because of how we've been treated because of our skin color. But when we think about the basic foundation of racism, it's about power. Mm-hmm. And if you don't share that power, you're hoarding it all in yourself. You're trying to control those power dynamics. That's what we're really seeing, across the country, across the world. People in power don't want to give up power. Mm-hmm. So they try to find different ways to make it so that they don't have to lose any power. I think that's what happened. If you go back to a couple of years when COVID happened, look at the murder of George Floyd, right? When it was in our face and we had to sit in our living rooms because we had stay-at-home orders, mm-hmm. and had to watch these things unfold and play out because the media, as you can see with recent events, They keep playing the same thing over and over again. So it gets embedded and ingrained in your psyche. And then we started getting sentimental because we couldn't go out and run away from it. It was in your face. So then we had these traumatic bonds with others that we don't know because we're all cooped up in a space, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with watching this man's murder over and over again, which also desensitizes us to violence. And what happened was you got this touch of guilt and fragility on different sides, and people wanted to do something, right? So then you saw all this movement, even in the corporate spaces of, DEI and belonging and health equity and all these things, only for it to be snatched back away a year and a half to 2 years later when another movement started to rise up even more, and you're seeing it play out even more now. And so I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and she was telling me about the different massacres that have happened in the Black community. And she mentioned the one in South Carolina at Orangeburg. And I was telling her, I said, if we are not careful, we're going to be right back in that same space if we're not careful about how rhetoric and stuff is going on right now. We have to be so careful of how things play out right now. And so when we talk about racism, I just want to make sure people understand there's a bigger part of that conversation. And then when you were talking earlier about seeing the longer game, the bigger picture, we got to do that with a lot of things just so that we don't get stuck. And it doesn't mean we can't go back and address some of these ills and these issues that have arisen because of what we faced. But we also have to find some footing for us to find, parity and achieve equity as well.
That's exactly right. And it's so amplified, isn't it? In this time and in this season, and so befitting that it is election season again. But it feels like for the last 8 years, it feels like every year is election season. It feels like every year we're having to make huge decisions about who we are and how we're going to live and how we survive. And it's just so interesting to see the play out in national scenes and even local scenes where people sacrifice themselves for some ideal that we never inherit as Black folk. Frederick Douglass said back in 1857, I believe, he said, there is no struggle, there is no progress. And for some reason, we have a tendency, contemporary people, I'm not just going to say Americans, I'm not saying Black people, I'm just saying contemporary society wants to have the benefits of everything without paying a price for them. Yeah. And power, as you stated very clearly, does not concede anything. You have to take it. And you have to be clear on why you're taking it. It's not to displace, it's not to hurt, it's not to destroy, it's to survive yourself. And the problem is, from my perspective, is that the society is set up on a measuring continuum that says in order for you to win, I must lose. Right. In order for you to have a good house, in order for you to have the land that you want to have, I must take it from you so that I can live well. And that's what we see playing out in cities all across this country. We see this move of gentrification, which is more than a racial move. It's an economic divide. Can
you stay there for a second?
Yeah, let's stay right there.
I talk about gentrification to people and they look at me like I'm crazy. I said gentrification is not a bad thing. Well, don't throw anything at me yet.
I'm going to listen.
I said the way the dominant culture have applied gentrification is a bad thing. So gentrification, if you look it up, it means revitalization, right? It means, reimagining, growing, going in. It's supposed to it's supposed to be for us to go in our communities and uplift it and kind of rehab it a little bit. What has been done is almost like you see with a lot of things that have more wholesome connotations, that it gets co-opted, right? And what has happened is the way it's been applied has become a very negative thing, because it has been, the revitalization, but also the things that come with that as the way it's being applied is the struggle of pushing people out of their homes and taking advantage of people. And that is not what gentrification is supposed to be about, but that's what it's become. And it's very sad.
It is. And the de facto reality has redefined the word.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I find it hard pressed to look anywhere and see where the concept of gentrification has been applied where Black people have prospered. It always is. Well, I'll say this: poor Black people. I'll say it like this: where poor Black people have prospered.
I mean, there's pockets. You'll find, some celebrities. There's a rapper in Houston named Slim Thug, who's gone and bought up a lot of homes and rebuilt them up in Houston. Beyonce and her family has done some stuff like that. You'll see pockets of it, but not at the vigor and the force that you see everywhere.
No, because the core concept of it is I need to get the property cheap so that I can bring value with my body and my being.
Well, you know the history behind that, right?
It's all rooted in race. Let me hear your take on it.
So, no, you're right. So those systems of unshared power, again.
Yeah.
So when they started letting Black people into white neighborhoods, right? Or any other population into a certain neighborhood, let's say a gated community, whatever. Then you had what they called white flight. So the white people started moving out. As soon as Black people started moving in and other ethnicities started moving in, white people started moving out. This is a more 20th century take, right? So when that happened, then you had Black families moving into where the white folks were. White folks moved somewhere else, right? So then what happens is the systems in which we live in allow those then now Black neighborhoods to go dilapidated. So then years later, we're able to say, oh, we're condemning this area. So you, like you said, to get it for cheap, move those people out where they were. So now everybody's trying to go back downtown and then get that land for cheap because they've let it go so badly now. They didn't do anything to help it. And there's scientific research they've done with rats that talk about this. It's something about Tyrone where they got one set of rats they give like good water and all stuff to, and then another set of rats where they stack them on top of each other and don't clean them, and they give them bad water and put different things. It's research that they've done to really look at this, right? And so we become a project or an experiment socially. And that's why you see so much of what we're talking about right now just play out. They just let time pass so they can, reap the benefits of the plans that they put in.
Yeah, and it goes a little bit deeper than that too. It's called redlining.
Yes,
It's called credit scoring.
Yes.
It's called neighborhood schools.
Yes.
So it's called a number of things,
Yes.
So you have these systems that have been put in place to intentionally keep people where they are. It's really population control, population management at its highest level from the evil side of things. You keep people corralled. We don't have to look at the rat experiment. I can go to South Rocky Mount and show you where that worked. I can go to Happy Hill. I can go to parts of Meadowbrook in my own community, the neighborhood I live in, and we can see how people who have been stripped of hope and intentionally marginalized, and it's almost like you're going to hold this place until I'm ready to go back and occupy that place. We can look in the history of the South When beaches were segregated, the only beach that one of the few beaches that Black people could attend, and this is within my lifetime, that's within my lifetime. Topsail Island was the Black beach, when I was growing up. Hilton Head, was a Black community.
All Black owned. All Black owned.
All Black owned, but when other people developed their spaces and said, okay, now we've done here, now we want yours too. And so, greed is really at the core and the base of everything. So what we have to do, from my perspective, Cornell, and I love having these kind of conversations. We've always been able to, inspire each other. But from my perspective, what we have to do as a people, as a Black people, we have to learn not to just adopt the ways that have not benefited us collectively. We got to learn how not to trade off our own personal benefit so that we can get something that nobody like us can get. Because, everybody loves to be special. And I hate it when people go, oh, I love the way you talk. You talk so differently. What do you mean by that? No, I don't. It's 1 million people who talk just like me. It's 5 million people who think just like me. So if we de-emphasize, needing to feel special by being included in somebody else's neighborhood group. I can live in your neighborhood now because that's better than where I live, because your body means more than my body. That's just a race issue. That's the stuff. And on this program, Cornell, what we try to do is enlighten our listeners so that they got something else to hear other than the okie doke that we're getting, spoon-fed by so many. I'm just so sick of people. Tim Scott, I'm tired of him. I'm just going to be frank. I mean, I can talk politics. It's my show. It's Choice FM station. I don't want to do anything to get them in trouble. But on my show, I just got to say, I'm sick of hearing Tim Scott say America's not a racist country. Yes, it is, Mr. Not Vice President. So you go around, shucking and holding the hat and passing the corn and being laughed at, the butt of jokes. And all you do is spawn just to get in the presence and be in a little, photo op, just to be talked about, abused. You talked about by your own people. You talked about by them. You go find somebody that's suitable to be on your arm. Don't even know what real love is. Come on, man. Come on. Learn how to love yourself. You can't love nobody if you don't love yourself.
Can I quote a dear friend, Dr. Michelle Cotton Laws?
Oh boy. This has got to be powerful. Come on, because that's a hard hitter right there. That's a hard hitter. I love this sister.
We were in a meeting at the state. We were all together.
Yeah.
We're not going to be having no shucking and jiving here.
That's right. We don't do that.
No.
We don't do that. My daddy told me I don't buck dance.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. When you talk about Topsail Island,
yeah.
I grew up in Jacksonville.
Okay, that's your backyard.
We used to go to that pier. And one of the deacons from our church used to take us to the pier to go fishing out there near Topsail. And one of the hurricanes took it out. I think they've since rebuilt it. But they were telling me, older people were telling me that was the only pier that we could fish at like that. Yeah.
That there were two places, Topsail Island and White Lake. And that's the lake that Black people were able to, at least when I was a little boy, able to swim at and enjoy. And it's just so sad, that we carry into the 21st century now some of these old vestiges. And you would think that these things should be written in history books to say, wow, have we come a long way? But we aren't coming a long way. We seem to be running rapidly in the opposite direction. So
you want to hear a story?
Yeah, I do.
Oftentimes I would talk to my staff, about some of these very same issues back at the state. And one question came up was, do you remember the first time you experienced racism? And I said, yes. and it was in Topsail. We had a black karate instructor, and he was doing classes in Topsail. So we had to drive from Jacksonville to Topsail, get beat up, fight.
You living in a military town. Let me just pause right there. You living in a military town.
Yep.
With all kind of martial arts, everything around you.
Okay, so it gets better. My dad did 20 years in the Marine Corps. The karate instructor was a person that was in the Marine Corps with my father, who also lived in Jacksonville, but he had to get his studio all the way out in Topsail.
My goodness.
He was a black man. He is a black man from Alabama with green eyes. And he not light skinned. So you go ahead and
that's our genetics. That's
put that together, right?
We can be anything. Yeah.
So, so my brother and I have a brother that's 2 years older than me. We would go and do these karate classes. I'm only in karate because my brother wanted to do it. So I'm the youngest of four. And so we're going back and forth. Bless my heart. Bless my mom, rest her soul. She was driving us back and forth. She was sick, but still, pressuring through so her babies could get this class, right? And we would go in there, and we had taken another type of karate before. So our gis were all black. We looked like militant little boys.
Ninja. Little black ninja. The black ninja.
Right. Then we go in there and all these other kids that don't look like us got on these clean white gis, right? And so my dad was like Joe Jackson when it came to karate, because we would have class with him after we had class, in regular class. Then we'd have to come home and fight each other. Yeah, I hated karate, but I took my frustration out on everybody else. It got so bad, we kept beating up on all the students. Like, not nasty, but just like we would always win. Because I had to fight my brother. Yeah. So nobody else would beat me because I couldn't beat him, so I was going to beat everybody else. And so in the karate, the classes make you some money, but it's the tournaments that make you the money, right? So I was excited. We were excited to go to our first tournament, and it was in our hometown. So it was like, okay, this is easy. We can go and do this. They would not let us compete. They told our sensei, they said, if them two boys are fighting in this tournament, we're not bringing our kids, because they were scared we were going to win. And so that, to me, was one of the earliest points where I experienced people holding power from someone to get what they wanted. And to me, that was one of the first and earliest experiences of racism that we faced. And we knew we were better than these guys. So the only way we could be at the tournament was to be the ones to carry the trophies to the winners. And if I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but we were hot. So when we finally did get a chance to go out of town to a tournament, we tore it up.
It was on. So that's like the black karate kid in North Carolina style. But you know what? This is the evil of racism. How old were you?
I was in elementary school.
So those adults
knew better.
Had no problem. No problem designing something to hurt you as a child. And this is what I want us to understand as a listening audience. These systems, the reason we have to bring attention to the injustice of these systems is because they are targeted to vulnerable people who can't fight themselves. And if they train, and when I say they, I don't have any, so white people listening, this is not directed towards any person, but we're talking about systems that you are able to change, that you are able to change. I look to my white brothers and my sisters to have courage enough to stand up and say, this is not just. Where were the parents that said, well, wait a minute, those boys work as hard as my boys worked? And why should they not be allowed to compete with my kids? And what about this? If my kids get a chance to fight against the best, won't that make them better? What about that? They were so concerned about the image of a black boy beating a white boy.
Come on now.
That's what the heart of that was.
Yeah.
That it changed the narrative at home about what equality means. It changes the narrative at home about what earn means.
Come on now.
Folk love to talk about earning our way while they strip you of everything that gives you the possibility to make your own way. I'm talking with Cornell Wright, health equity, intellect, and expert recognized around the country. And we're just so blessed to have him here as a resident right here in North Carolina. Cornell, thank you so much for joining me and joining us with all this good talk. Don't you all love to express yourself? We can just talk about whatever we want to talk about, flow wherever it needs to go, and get enlightened along the way. We're going to take a break for just a few minutes. We're going to come back with more of Express Yourself after we pay some bills. And this is Reuben Blackwell having a powerful conversation with Cornell Wright. You better not change that dial. Just hold on a minute. We'll be right back.
Choice FM is live at 5.
But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.
This is Reuben Blackwell coming back with more of Express Yourself. I have with me Cornell Wright, who is a recognized expert in this country related to health equity. And we're going to talk for a little bit about health. We talked for the first half of our time together, Cornell, about, just living as a black person in North Carolina, in America, and muddling through all of the things that we got to do to learn how to live and survive. But we want to thrive. Let's talk about health in particular. Tell me, we talked a little bit about COVID and the time that the world, literally paused and everything changed all over the globe. What did COVID show you as relates to population health management?
That is a great question. And I'll start off by this. Given the proper resources at our disposal, we could actually make a difference. We had so much money and personnel resources flowing during COVID. If that was the case, even a fraction of that was the case all year round without a pandemic, a lot of the issues that we see wouldn't be issues for very long. And we were able to, in our office, then the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities, we were able to take the money. We didn't even get a lot of money, but to our communities, it was more than a lot, right? We took every dime that we got, every penny, and put it back in the community. Now, I know that may not sound.
So what does that mean? But so
yeah, that's just about to say.
You and I we work in health, and so we know where streams of funds do make a difference. But from your perspective, and for our listeners who might not be engaged in this every day and what they do, what kind of dollars came through your hands, and where did you put it? What were your priorities?
Initially, we had about 700,000 or so to help with testing, to go into community about just people to get tested, where the testing sites were. And so what we were able to do in our office were get community organizations funded to help with that effort on a local level, which is work we've been, that blueprint is something we've done out of our office for years. That's why we had such a good footprint within community, because we don't do this surface level community. We go into community. Right? That notion of when you park your car, you might feel a little scared. back when you go to the community and they got the foil, the chicken in the foil with the white bread. Yeah,
That's
that
right.
kind of
The real fish sandwich.
right. The hot sauce, right? That kind of community, and doing it after, like, you work a full day and then go to community. So it wasn't, you meet the community where they are, and
Right.
they're working. So I get off work, people like Ben Money and others like Victor Armstrong, Dr. Michelle Laws, Deborah Farrington, Jeremy Collins, people like that. We were at the state level, but still going into the community, right? And so we were able to put, that initial set of money in community organizations, which some of those community organizations were able to parlay into state contracts. To when vaccines rolled around, they were able to work with the state as a preferred vendor to be in their own communities. Because
and let's talk about why that was important. Because I want you to set the context, because I remember we were one of those places and spaces where, remember, everything COVID testing at the outset was all based on your ability to book an appointment online.
Yes. So what was interesting is, and I mentioned the name Ben Money, right? Ben was brought in right before COVID to be the Deputy Secretary for Health. Right? That's a whole nother conversation that could be a whole nother show by itself. Black man, first of all, named Ben Money.
Yeah, right.
Let's get people to smile, right?
He's a good man.
And so what was important was that myself, Dr. Michelle Laws, Ben, and others, we had a conversation because, like you were saying, the context was you had to book an appointment to get tested. And then even when we made the pivot to test in certain communities, people from not from that community were jumping the line in front of the people in that community so that they could get tested, right?
Can I just interject right here? Because I'm going to make it real to the people listening in Rocky Mount. So what was happening here, Ben Money used to be the CEO of the North Carolina Community Health Center Association, which gave him the credibility to know what our state looked like and know where the most concerning places of health inequities were presenting. And in Rocky Mount, that's 45 minutes from the Triangle. We had, remember, the only places on the outset were hospitals where people could come get tested. And what ended up happening for us is that my people were coming back telling me, well, I went to the hospital to get tested and all the white people were in the front of the line and all the black people were in the back of the line. And I'll never forget, I called Ben and I said, Ben, I know you all are going to work with OIC. I said, but let me tell you what we're going to do here. We're not going by that BS. You have to go online to make an appointment. Right. We're about saving lives. We're going to set up our testing in our communities, in our neighborhood. We're going to our parking lots and we're going to set up testing, and nobody is going to tell us who we can and cannot see. And that's what you did for Rocky Mount. I'm just going to say this for everybody listening. And as a result of your policy and the result of you and Michelle and Victor and Ben all, ganging up together because you had to stick together to stay together, because it doesn't mean, racism is not a respecter of political party. This is bigger. I don't want anybody thinking that, that one party or the other is the party of racism. No. This is an international construct of power. That's what you're talking about. Yes. So go ahead. So you finish the story.
So I'm gonna tell you where it really, on top of that too, what really made sense, that got everybody's attention, because it already had our attention, your attention. They did a testing event at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Right? And when we got those numbers back, the utilization numbers, that's when we all said, nope, we got to change something.
That's right, something got to change.
It was like 80 to 90% of the people who got tested were all white. And then the rest were any other ethnic minority, or minoritized population, however you want to say it. Everybody else was under that. I mean, it was atrocious. And so then we had to start putting in language and policy to kind of put these equity set asides to say, if you're testing, you have to make sure that you're testing more than just the dominant population. And then your test and your vaccines were based off that kind of formula. So we actually came up with a scientific formula to make sure that people were getting the doses based on their performance too. So like the numbers had to show equity in it, not just, oh yeah, we said we didn't know. What are the numbers? And that's why we had a transparent dashboard process that got put in place. I remember going to Louisiana virtually and having to present to their state equity, board, full of legislators and everybody, what we were doing here in North Carolina. I remember going, talking to the legislature here to tell them about equity, right? Because before then, they were like, well, I know disparities, what's equity? Kind of
conversation.
Yeah. And so I mean, it's so funny. I have the articles, I got the recordings of just basically telling them what we needed to do. You need to fund this. You need to take, pull up all the stops. And when they did that, we saw differences.
Yes.
Problem is, we stopped.
So in the stopping, which is a wonderful place to shift, where are places that we need to, or what concerns you related to the state of health? And let's talk, I mean, my listening audience is broad and diverse, but our show has a particular focus on Black people and people of color in particular. Tell me what bothers you, what concerns you with presentation.
I feel the people in greatest need, and let me be as transparent as possible. I am a Black man, but I also have American Indian heritage. My father, my grandfather on my mother's side is an Oxendine out of Lumberton.
Oh yeah.
So, so I had this kind of duality within me to make sure that our people on all sides are getting, what we need. And what that said is, I feel that we're going to get lost in the shuffle. This is an election year, right? The governor of this state has been in power for 2 terms. So he's rolling off. He only gets 2 terms, right? In that transition, I feel like we are losing a lot of good people in those positions that are going off to do something else. They're retiring or whatever. So then you're losing momentum that you had built up. You're losing institutional knowledge. I mean, even people like me who left before, I left in 2022, but, there's institutional knowledge that I have to sometimes tell the people that are there now about something that happened. I mean, you can leave all the transition documents you want. It's just certain things that you're just not going to know. And that's why it was so important before I left that we got that article put in the North Carolina Medical Journal that talked about the history of the office, how all that equity work had, kind of gone through even before the formulation of the office, what was going on in this state and why that was important to capture. Because I knew I wasn't going to be there forever. And I knew we needed something to kind of tell that story. And so I'm afraid that in this transition space, we're losing momentum and people are going to suffer. Now, the one good thing that is happening right now is that we did expand Medicare.
Medicaid.
Medicaid, sorry. And it's, we're over 500,000 people, which is amazing for something that just kind of got, approved officially in December. To be there already is amazing. What pauses me though is the potential strain that could happen to systems like that are not used to a large influx of beneficiaries. So we got to be careful to make sure those systems work properly and succinctly.
Great conversation with Cornell Wright, who is a health equity expert, leader, and a native North Carolinian. Got North Carolina running all through your blood, Cornell. And, Cornell pointed out that he's part native, and I'll just say, if you're born black in the South, you're some of everything anyway. You know, we are a compendium of everything. Because hey, the laws of the land created something back in the 1800s called the one drop rule. So, so it sort of creates some frustration for people who use the terminology biracial today. We've always been multiracial. Black people have always been multiracial. And white people too. In fact, the definitions of black and white have changed over the years, So frankly, this is a human being issue, isn't it?
Yes.
So human beings, let's talk for a minute, and we're gonna wrap up on this. Let's talk for a minute about maternal health. I just want to, whenever we talk healthcare, I always want to shout out and give some light on the subjects of how Black women are treated in the healthcare system throughout America. And it's shameful. It's shameful that we've institutionalized the acceptance of pain from Black people, the acceptance of poor health outcomes, almost like that's a given, So tell me how you feel about Black maternal health, and what do you think are some answers that we could address?
So the journey for me to really get into equity space started long before I worked at the state. But the refining period for me was when I was working at the state. And I'm going to mention a name, and I know you know this name. And if you don't, then I've done something wrong in our friendship over the years. But Belinda Pettiford.
Oh, well, I know the name because that's my homegirl. We're from the same.
Right. But Belinda Pettiford, a legend in public health here in North Carolina and beyond.
Yeah.
She's also a legend in Delta. But, that's a whole nother conversation for Greek life.
All right. Root to the kids.
And so it's because of Belinda. Belinda served, I don't know if you knew this, but Belinda served 2 different times as the interim director of the Office of Minority Health, while still doing her other role in maternal child health in that space as a branch head. And so once I got hired, I worked with Belinda to not only help establish our health equity footing, but also learning and sharing through a maternal and child health lens. So we did a lot of joint work together, and I got so involved. I don't think I ever told you this. I got so involved that I wanted to be a male doula. Like, I was into it. And so my daughter now is 13, but when she was born, it was because of Belinda and her staff that taught me so much. I was such a hands-on parent. And this is before I even got to the state. We were working with Belinda through GBSC, and we were working with them. They were funding work we were doing in the northeastern part of the state with different churches up there, up in what is that? Northampton County and places like that. Mm-hmm. And so just the fact of learning and growing from that has always put, maternal child health front and center for me. I've worked with her and others to do national health equity conversations about maternal child health. Right now, CMS has funding available to address maternal child health. And so literally going on a webinar about that funding opportunity on Thursday. And it just, it really, for me, it is the crux of everything. You have to really address maternal child health if you want anything to be successful. Because
tell us what are some of those measurement points that we're looking at? What has to
change? We've got to change from the numbers of women being able to have good, accessible healthcare during pregnancies, right? And even before pregnancies, we want to make sure that men and women, but especially our women, are eating well and not just eating. I mean, I might step on some toes. You just can't be sitting there eating Takis all day, right? You need nutritious meals. You need to make sure you're taking folic acid. So, places like the March of Dimes and people like Michaela Penix are doing things on a national level to help with these numbers, because we don't want to have low birth weights, and we don't want to have low birth rates, and we don't want to have stillbirths. And there's so many people. There's a woman by the name of Tamika Isaac who goes across the country and talks about her story of losing her baby in childbirth, right? And how she's in a part of this campaign called Count the Kicks. So there are things that can be done that are preventable. And I go back, I'm a reference this historical text from the King James Version of the Bible, where it's Hosea 4:6, where it says, our people are utterly destroyed due to lack of knowledge, right? There are things that if we just knew, and like you said earlier, normalized in our communities, it would save so many people. So I tip my hat to places like OIC and other faith communities as well, who have done the work to help understand the importance of maternal child health in our communities. But even when you go to other communities, you go to the American Indian population communities, you go to Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities, you go to some Asian communities, because they're not all a monolith, right? They are having issues too, because it's a thing where if you don't have the resources, you don't have the knowledge, and you don't have the accessibility to good food, healthcare, housing, those drivers and determinants of health, then it's going to put you more at risk.
Yeah. And I'm also going to say poor white communities.
Yes, them too. Yeah.
So, because we have a tendency to lump everybody in one category. Everyone white is not rich. Everyone white is not does not have access. Everyone white is not educated. We always knew that, but to have the market know that is different. Yes. It's different. Well, Cornell, you have just really been a pleasure this afternoon having a conversation with you. Thank you for joining us today with Express Yourself. We appreciate your knowledge or insight. Thank you for giving us an insight into institutions that we sort of might all take for granted, but there's real people back there, really who care about the work and care about human lives, throughout North Carolina. And you're certainly one of those heroes, and we celebrate you. And thank you so much. Any final words before I close out today?
I just really salute the work that you've done over the span of your existence, like not just professionally, but also, getting in the community, pulling up your sleeves, making a difference. And you inspire so many of us to keep pushing and doing the right things. And so this platform is just an extension of the greatness of who you are. And I'm just so happy to contribute to it and be a part of it. And I'm glad to call you one of my mentors and one of my good friends, because you have definitely bent my ear a few times and kept me motivated and inspired. So I appreciate this.
Wow. I didn't pay him anything. Promise.
No money has passed. No money has passed,
man. Thank you so much. Cornell, you're a bright star, and we just need you to keep shining, sir. Thank you so much. And to the listening audience, thank you for tuning in, as you always do every week, to listen to Good Talk with me, Reuben Blackwell, your host with Express Yourself. I've had Cornell Wright, absolute treasure of a guest. He's one to watch, guys. He's one to watch. Keep your eye on him, because great things will happen. Thank you again for listening to us, and come back next week for more of our weekly talk show, Express Yourself. This is Reuben Blackwell and Cornell Wright signing out. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Choice FM is live at 5.
But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.